Have you ever said,
well, everyone's a little bit autistic?
if you have, please stop. For those of you who are new here, I am Sam and I make videos about autism and neurodiversity. Now, I've noticed people like to bandy this phrase around, we're all a little bit autistic, or everyone's on the spectrum, generally directed to the recently diagnosed or those who present mildly. Now, I may be wrong here, after all, I am the one with the communication difficulty, but the underlying feeling behind this phrase always strikes me as,
I don't believe you. Oh sure, you've got a few quirks. But everyone's got a few quirks. We're all on the spectrum somewhere.
Essentially though, this is a shutdown phrase. You can't talk about your struggles or needs because everyone has these needs. Everyone has these struggles, and therefore your autism isn't really real. It's just a variety of everyone's same experiences. Aside from the massive assumptions you have to make to get to that point, it's not even correct to say that we're all on the spectrum. The autistic spectrum isn't a linear gradient where you go from not at all autistic on one side to tragically autistic on the other side. The whole human population isn't dotted along the spectrum with everybody sitting there being more or less autistic than each other. The autistic spectrum, funnily enough, is where just the autistic people live. And if you're not autistic, you're not on the spectrum. What you might have, however, are certain autistic traits. For example, you might be very sensitive to sounds, even to the extent of having misophonia. But that doesn't make you a bit autistic, it makes you very sensitive to sounds. If you have trouble with coordination or proprioception, you might be diagnosed with dyspraxia. You wouldn't be a bit autistic. If you only have difficulties in one area, they call it something else. Sensory processing disorder, OCD, dyspraxia, social anxiety. Sure, you can absolutely have a couple of autistic traits here and there, but that doesn't make you a bit autistic. Although I'm sure you would sympathise with our experience more than the average person. Autism is where you have some combination of several listed traits that has a clinically significant impact on your day-to-day living. But here's where it gets complicated. What that actually looks like can vary drastically from autistic person to person. So instead of seeing the spectrum like every autistic person takes up their own spot, ranging from a bit quirky over here to mega super autistic over here, imagine each autistic person as their own unique colour palette. My colour palette might be sensory processing, executive functioning issues, and difficulty picking up social cues, for example. Someone else might have an increased need to stim, be unable to speak, or have a deep need for routine. Now that person wouldn't be more or less autistic than me, just a different colour palette of autism. Seeing autism as a linear spectrum not only overestimates my abilities as a perceived high-functioning autistic person, but underestimates the abilities of those who have been labelled as low-functioning. There are countless examples of non-verbal autistic people, historically and even today, who have been assumed to be below average intelligence and not capable of understanding, and treated thusly. It's only once they've been given a communication device such as an AAC that people understand that they're actually rather intelligent and funny. Just as you shouldn't assume that I have no struggles because I present mildly, you shouldn't assume that a non-verbal autistic people can't understand you or needs to be infantilized in some way. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and it is impossible to categorize us neatly without wildly misrepresenting our lived experiences. However, I do want to mention one theory I have about the people who say this. So you tell your friends of your diagnosis, your struggles, your experiences, and they relate. They might relate a lot. But they haven't been diagnosed, they're not autistic, are they? Obviously autism is underdiagnosed in women, and probably also in men who tend to mask a lot, and who end up being diagnosed as adults. So I do think that for some people who use this phrase, they don't realise that all these experiences that they have struggled with aren't what the neurotypical population experiences. Because they don't feel disordered, they just feel like, isn't that what everybody thinks? Isn't that how everyone feels? No, it's not. So my theory is that a lot of the people, or some of the people who say this, might be undiagnosed autistic people themselves. And if you are, I'm not giving you a hard time about using this phrase. You can definitely join the club when you're ready. But it's hard to get your head around that, even for me. I've struggled a lot with imposter syndrome since my diagnosis, despite the fact that the psychologist told me I ticked every box. Apparently it was an easy diagnosis for her to make, once she could get me to stop talking about myself. But I still find myself doubting it, especially when I have a few good days or a few good weeks. I think, I can't really be autistic, can I? And this is exactly why we have to stop pathologizing autism and recognizing that autistic people have strengths, have good days, have intrinsic value to society that comes as a direct result of their different neurology. So if you like this video, I have many more on the topic of autism and neurodiversity, so keep watching and please subscribe for a new video every week. See you next time.